Hello and welcome back to Crushing Comics, the show where I fall in love with my comic book collection all over again. I have a pretty hefty one here today. I guess maybe it's an absolute. I don't know. It seems like maybe it's multiple books, and I don't have any. I only have one more absolute, so we'll see. While we're unpacking this, today I was thinking about the nature of knowledge. Is this a big enough topic? The reason I was thinking about it, though, is a pretty heavy reason. I was reading about the book burnings in Nazi Germany, and how one of those was of an institute of study of sex, and that it destroyed a lot of original text and research that was actually quite liberal and forward-thinking about the acceptance of gay and lesbian people and of transgender people. And that not only erased that from German society of the time, but it also erased it from knowledge. Like, when we read about the book burnings in history, in history textbooks, we don't often read about that part. It was really new to me to learn about it in the last couple of years. And it's not like we have this like perfect library catalog of all of the information and research that was lost in that burning, so we can't even enumerate the knowledge that we no longer have. And I was thinking about that because today we think of information as being like so permanent, right? Like any given book, there's hundreds of copies, and you know, it's on the internet and the cloud, but this is something that's only existed for us in terms of the cloud in the last 10 or 20 years, in terms of the vast number of like ubiquitous thousands of printed copies in the last 200 or 300 years. And like, how lasting is any of this stuff? Is anything that we have right now any more or less susceptible to the way we recorded human history in the past? And you know, I think that it's like a lot of hubris to say that like, oh, well, all of this knowledge we have now is going to be so durable. You know, we have to do a lot of research to try to learn anything about the way life looked like in the 1800s, 1700s, 1600s, and so forth. And I think it's kind of foolish to just have this base assumption that like everything is permanent. You know, if all of the computers in the world went down right now, how much information would we lose that's only ever been encoded on digital media, right? If there was some kind of worldwide EMP event, would we even retain any video archives? Probably only things that were on like hard media, like DVDs. I don't say this because I'm trying to like get into some kind of apocalyptic rambling, but I just think it's interesting to think about the nature of our permanence. You know, I spent all this time amassing this book collection. We spent all these time, you know, blogging, writing, collecting songs, watching TV shows, and that it's all just like ephemeral blips in media that might not, you know, be part of the fossil record that people have available to them when they're investigating our society, you know, even 500 years from now. Sorry, that got really heavy really fast. Speaking of heavy, oh hey, and it actually kind of, sort of, I think I can make it have something to do with what I just unwrapped. So this for me is a very rare indie oversized book. I have a few of them down here, but really, you know, it's mostly Marvel with that little scattering of DC. And these are Fear Agent library editions 1 and 2. Fear Agent is one of the major creator-owned works by Rick Remender. And it started out at Image, and then it moved to Dark Horse, but now they've taken the publishing rights from Dark Horse just in the past couple of weeks and are bringing them back to Image. Gosh, so as with many books, I've read the first one, and then the second one you can see is still in the wrapper. So let's see what I can tell you about Fear Agent. Well, first I want to talk about Rick Remender. So most people came to know Rick Remender because he was writing the amazing run of Uncanny X-Force at Marvel. And to a lesser extent, I think people got to know him a little bit because he was also writing Punisher at the time. But he got very hot, and then in Marvel now, he was the writer of Captain America and the original writer of Uncanny Avengers. So he was one of the most visible writers at Marvel, and he had been turning in some really quality stuff prior to Marvel Now. I don't like his Marvel Now material that much, but I was there at the time reading, and there was this drumbeat of like, we want more Rick Remender stuff. And so that's part of where there was this surge of interest in his creator-owned work, and his longest run that was creator-owned at that time was Fear Agent. But Rick Remender actually came from being an artist. Originally, you can find Avengers issues, I think, where he was the inker back in the pre-Bendis era of Avengers. And Fear Agent was really one of the first long-term books that he started to do. And he did it originally with Tony Moore, who, if I'm not mistaken, is one of the original artists of The Walking Dead. And they started it, and it's this very, it's a love letter to Pulp Fiction. It's very, not the movie, the Quentin Tarantino movie with John Travolta, but of this kind of like 1950s Flash Gordon sort of spacefaring, you know, mercenary type guy, Pulp Fiction. And as the story goes, and there's a great oral history of this online that you can read, as the story goes, you know, it was being well received, people liked it, but it was not selling a huge amount of copies. And this is while it was at Image. And at Image, everything's creator owned, and Image, I don't think, like, fronts you a lot of money to, like, keep your series going. It's kind of up to you. And so they wind up bringing in another illustrator who's Jerome Opina, who's one of my favorite illustrators. And so they have this rhythm with Moore and Opina and Remender, but all of them are like needing other work because the sales of this series are not enough to sustain them. And so a couple of things happen. They do all take other work, and the issues of this series aren't always coming out on necessarily a monthly basis. But the other thing is it goes to Dark Horse, because Dark Horse is a publisher that I don't know what their royalty agreement is, but they actually make it possible for the series to continue with fewer monthly readers supporting it, and they also help Remender and company make money off of the trades. So what is this really about? It's hard for me to describe. There's this, it starts out with this kind of very doodly dude, down and out, you know, how they're always called, spacefaring guy, Heath Houston, who is just around to kind of clean out bad encampments of aliens, like basically infestations. And it's actually pretty interesting. And what happens is, in the course of cleaning out aliens, he happens upon this like much bigger problem in scope, other than just aliens infesting one place. And he gets sucked into trying to be a hero in this situation. But in getting sucked into being a hero, he actually goes through an amount of time travel and encounters people he knows in his life in kind of different fantastical sci-fi settings, some of which are, I think, in the past. It has been a while since I have read this. Here's something, a feeling that I often have in comics, and especially in an indie comic like this one, is that I think they're so good at setting up like an interesting status quo. Like I was into Heath's struggle, I was into the setting, I thought it was really cool. And then the status quo gets like shattered right away, and you realize that maybe you were more interested in the status quo than you are in the continuing story. This happens to me a lot. Like I'll read a first issue of an indie comic book and I'm like, wow, this world is so cool. I am so totally into it. And then it continues and I'm like, ooh, you know what? Really the only thing I was into here was the world building. I don't know if I care enough about this story. And that was actually my experience with Fear Agent. I was totally into it at the beginning. I thought it was cool, vibrant. And then once it like went through that big scene shift and we started to like, follow him through different times and the story was like a little bit more fractured, my interest went from like 100% to 0%. I couldn't even like get it in me to turn a page of a single issue. I was just so over it. And I actually was going to sell these before I left the United States, and I just couldn't find anybody at the time to buy them. However, now that it's going back to Image, and Image is going to be printing new paperbacks of it, Dark Horse will not be printing these Dark Horse library editions anymore, and so now these are probably going to be a little bit more hotly wanted. In fact, they've been kind of kept in continual print up until this point, and so people like didn't get too bothered about if they went away, because much like the Hellboy books, they had a knowledge, they thought, of them coming back. And so now that they're not going to come back, all of a sudden, like, the interest and the prices are creeping up. So, hey, if you're in New Zealand and you want my copies, talk to me. But it also makes me think, like, maybe it's time for me to sit down and read it. I did that original reading probably in 2012, hot off of reading Uncanny X-Force, thinking that Remender was just the bee's knees, and reading this and kind of feeling like, oh, what is this? It's not my jam. And I think in the 6 years since then, which is a crazy sentence to say, I've actually appreciated indie comics more, and I think I would appreciate the rhythm of the story a little bit more now than I did before. So that is all I really have to say about Fear Agent. If you're a big Rick Remender fan from his time at Marvel, I don't know that I would say Fear Agent should be the first thing you pick up. It predates that, and so it's a very different version of Rick Remender, who's the writer here. And he's evolved as a storyteller, and the things that he's releasing now, Tokyo Ghost, Black Science, Low, Deadly Class, gosh, he's really on a roll. These are the books that I think are much more indicative of the the Remender that you probably know and love from Marvel. So if I had to recommend an indie Remender to get into, I think I would have to recommend Deadly Class. I think Deadly Class is the most accessible and kind of the most funny, and it's the least out there in terms of sci-fi concepts. I think Tokyo Ghost is also very digestible because it's like, I think it's just 12 issues and it's not this long ongoing series. Black Science is much more similar to Fear Agent, and Low is its own thing, and they are both much longer running, so you're kind of getting into a lot there. And Deadly Class recently shot a pilot of a TV show, so better to get in now and be the cool kid and say that you knew what it was before you get there. The other thing is, in my constant march against matte finish books, it's funny, I loved that matte finish cover the other day on X-Fan, but this matte finish book, I don't know, it's always hard to understand if you're going to be able to see this or not. It takes you could see it there. It takes scratches really easily and bumps. So this is one of those soft touch matte finishes, and they really get bumped up so easily. You can see the spine there. It's just the nature of it. It takes indents really easily. So if you're going to buy these and you've been searching for them, be a careful looker into the condition of them, whoever you're buying it from, and make sure you tell them to wrap it carefully for you, because even just in the mail, a little bit of bumping around can really destroy these books with these soft touch covers. So that is what I've got to say about Fear Agent Volumes 1 and 2. This is the complete series. There's no indication that they're going back to it. You will have it all, and you don't have to track down these hardcovers if you're not a hardcover fiend, because it is about to be reprinted in its new old home of Image Comics. So here is our ceremonial shelving of Fear Agent, volumes, one comes first, volumes 1 and 2 by Rick Remender, Tony Mordro Mopena, and more. So here we go. All right. Beautiful shot of my back there. Please tune in next time as we continue to fall in love with my comic book collection all over again, as we get to an ever smaller amount of books left wrapped on the shelf. Thank you so much for watching Crushing Comics.